Oh, happy Chanukah, everyone! Today, we're going to speak about Chanukah. We already gave 2 lectures last year on Chanukah. We thought we can't go through a Chanukah without giving another lecture about some different ideas about Chanukah. And I don't know what I'm going to speak about today, so I'm gonna hoof it. I got a couple of ideas. I want to start off, and we'll see how it naturally goes. Maybe I should just do that for all my videos. Otherwise, I never get anything done. Yeah. Right, so this should be Little Nishmasa, my grandmother, Yortzeit today. It's an anniversary, I think 40 years now. Rivka Bas Avraham, so I'd like to do it in her memory, and Little Nishmasa. Okay, so just to start off quickly, what is Chanukah? Chanukah is to commemorate 2 things which happened to the Jewish people about 2,300 years ago, something like that, in the time of in the land of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. The Jews still were in the period of the Second Temple, and they were in one of the 4 exiles. We spoke about the 4 exiles before. The exile, the Greek exile. So what was the Greek exile? The Greek exile is when after the Persian exile, which is a Purim story, the Greeks ascended to become the world power with Alexander the Great. And as we're going to see today, lots of things changed fundamentally at that point in time, where you could almost split human history into 2 halves, right? From the time of Adam, which is according to our calculation, about 5,785 years ago, right? And we're talking about 2,300 years ago this thing happened, so it's kind of sort of like right in the middle of history. We have the Greek exile. Now, it's interesting, it's called the Greek exile because we actually weren't exiled from our land. All the other 3 exiles, the Babylonian, the Roman exiles, which are the first and the fourth, right? The Roman being the 4th one, which happened about just about 2,000 years ago. The Jews were actually exiled from the land of Israel, and by the first exile, we went generally into Babylon, to modern-day Iraq, and by the second exile, the Jews were dispersed throughout the whole world. And in the Persian exile, we weren't sent out of the land of Israel, but we were kept out of the land of Israel. We weren't allowed to go back, and we were actually outside of Israel throughout that period. In the Greek exile, that's after King Cyrus and King Darius II gave permission for the Jewish people to return to Israel and to rebuild the temple. They rebuilt the Second Temple, but then a few years later, the Persian Empire was basically conquered by the Greek Empire, and the Greeks also, as part of that, took over the land of Israel. Alexander the Great came to Israel. There's a story there's a few stories. We mentioned one of the stories about Alexander last year. I think one of the lectures last year about Chanukah. That's more of an Agada. That's sort of like a sort of metaphysical, esoteric sort of story. Whether it physically happened like that, we don't know. But we know that Alexander was at the time of Shimon Hatzadik. Shimon Hatzadik. Those who know that the Tractate Avos, we mentioned a couple of times, the Tractate of Ethics of the Fathers, right? It actually starts off with the Mishnah, which goes Moshe Kibbel Torah Messiah. Moses, we were speaking about the tradition and the passing on of our tradition from generation to generation, who the leaders were in each generation. So Moses, of course, and the Jewish people were at the time of the giving of the Torah at Sinai. So Moses got the Torah, he taught it on to the Yeshua, to Joshua, then to the Zakanim of the elders, which are basically the leaders of the Jewish people throughout the Tanakh, the Old Testament, if you want to call it that. The Zakanim, and the Zakanim to the Nevi'im, to the prophets, and the prophets passed it on to the men of the Great Assembly. So these are men who, why is it called the Great Assembly? The Gemara says, the Talmud says, because they returned God's name to its lofty heights. Very interesting. Maybe we'll touch on that if I remember. Of course, I've got the ideas in my head. The question is which ones I'll be able to remember and put together at the end. Right. So the Anshe Knesset Gdola, and the first member, I think one of the first members of the Anshe Knesset Gdola was Ezra and Nehemiah, right? You have Mordechai as well, was part of the Anshe Knesset Gdola, the men of the Great Assembly. There's 120 members. One of the last ones was actually Shimon Hatzadik, Simon the righteous, right? And he was actually the first Kohen Gadol. I believe he was the first. Yeah, he was the first high priest in the Second Temple period, right? And in his reign, so Alexander the Great had grown to well, he was only 8 or 12 years. He conquered the whole world effectively, most of the known world. Incredible, and died at the age of 32, I think. Right, so as part of that, he passed through the land of Israel, and he met up with Shimon Hatzadik, and there's a story about that. Interesting. I wonder if it's connected with what I want to talk about today. I'll tell you the story, and if we have a deeper insight into it, we'll touch on it. So the story goes like this: Shimon Hatzadik heard that Alexander was coming to the land of Israel to conquer it. Obviously, he's going to be very worried for the sake of the Jewish people. And what did he do? So he went out. So he had a plan. So let's go out and meet Alexander, and maybe we'll negotiate with him not to kill everyone. We'll make peace with him, and and that was the idea. Now, this is before the Chanukah story happened. So Alexander was coming. So the description in the passage which speaks about this describes Alexander traveling through the night from one side, and Shimon Hatzadik, Shimon the righteous, traveling from the other side with the people from his entourage, and they're carrying torches in their hands. Everything about this story's got significance in it, as we know that whenever there's an agada, that whenever there is a portion of the oral law which speaks about stories, every single detail has got very deep significance to the underlying ideas which are hidden in that story. There's two parts essentially to the Torah, to the Torah which we have the Oral Torah, which is the one which has been passed down, not the written one. We're going to speak about that today, hopefully. You've got you've got the halacha. That means the laws. The laws are basically saying, right, you can't eat this. It's not kosher. You can eat this. This is permitted on the Sabbath. You can't do this on the Sabbath, etc. All different laws, which we have to keep. That's the majority of the Talmud, and quite significant parts of other books of the oral law. It's called the oral law because originally it was only passed down orally from teacher to student, but as memories started to fade and not be so strong, they were forced to commit certain like the key parts of the oral law to writing, and hopefully that will help people hook in and have an anchor to be able to remember all the details, which we do until today, right? In each generation, every few hundred years, there's a whole collection of all the oral law. Until then, it all gets written down, and nowadays, all the oral law basically gets written down. Because our memories are terrible now, right? We don't have the ability to memorize so much stuff, right? And also, it's very useful for people to learn as well who don't have access to teachers, because we don't have the such easy access to, because Jews around the whole world now. So access to teachers is not so easy either. Right? We've got the internet, which helps a lot of people. Of course, if you're watching this. So they're walking towards each other with fire in their hands, fire, with torches of fire, right? Interesting, the idea of the light illuminating the night, which is what the Chanukah, we can see the Chanukah story is all about this. That's a very deep idea about what Chanukah is. And when they meet each other, right, and it's very interesting, it says that Shimon Hatzadik wore the robes of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest. Now, really, you're only meant to wear these clothes while you're doing the service inside the temple. But he walked way outside the temple to meet Alexander wearing these clothes, right? Now, when they met each other, they saw each other from the distance. Alexander this is how the story goes, Alexander got off his horse, he walked over, and he bowed down to the Kohen Gadol, to Shimon Hatzadik, the Kohen Gadol, the high Kohen, the high priest. And his officers said to him, Melech Gadol shekemoischa yishtachve leYehudi zeh, a great king like you, bowing down to this Jew? What are you doing? And he told him something quite amazing. He said, the image of this person I'm seeing now would always go in front of me when I was doing war. I always had a dream before I did a battle that I was going to win, and this person came along, maybe telling him that he was going to win. So this is sort of like a good omen sort of thing, right? Is the Kohen Gadol, and now it's a real person. I'm seeing him the first time for real, and it was that's why he bowed down, a sign of respect. And they negotiated, and they were very peaceful with the Jews, and Alexander left the Jews alone. And because of that, very interesting, it's a unique thing here, is that as a thank you and as a respect for the Alexander being so nice to the Jewish people and leaving them, he could have done whatever he wanted with them, theoretically. Out of respect, we took on his name as a Jewish name. So now Alexander is a Jewish name. Obviously, non-Jews can call it as well, but there's certain names which, for example, me myself, my English name is Adam, but my Hebrew name is Abba Mordechai Chaim. I've got 3 names actually, right? So, but let's say my name was Gary or something like that, right? My Hebrew name would not be Gary, because Gary is not a Jewish name. The Jewish name in Judaism, the person's Hebrew name is associated, actually on one level, it is the name of the soul of the person, right? So if you want to know what your essence is, you look at your Jewish name, or your name, you can work out with a general name, you can learn a lot from the name, right? We're not going into that now. Of course, we spoke about this, about the Lashon HaKodesh, about the holy language, that lecture we had quite a while back, about the significance of the Hebrew words. They're the spiritual essence of the object. So the same thing with the person. Their name is the spiritual essence of who the person is. But yet we see that that Jewish people, now their Hebrew name, many people call the children Alexander or Alex, right? I think my brother-in-law's called Alex, but that's his English name. That doesn't quite work. But there's even a Yiddish version, Sender, right? Or what's it called? Lex, things like that. We've got lots of variations on the name Alex. We find Jewish people who call that. It all comes because of Alexander the Great. We don't name our names after any other non-Jewish people who even may have done good things to the Jewish people. You don't find Jewish people called Cyrus or Darius or anything like that, even though they were good to the Jews. They let them build the temple, etc. Right? So yes, it's a very, very special story, and so it's a very interesting idea of the Alexander seeing a picture of the high priest with his clothes, with the high priest's clothes, and he bows down to them. Very interesting. So if you remember, we spoke about last time on Chanukah about what is the real battle between, why is it an exile exactly? It's not physical exile. The exile actually happened the generation after Alexander the Great, where his empire was split into 4 parts, and Antiochus was one of his 4 generals, and he took over the region of Syria and what we would call Israel today, right? Or Eretz Israel. And he subjugated the Jewish people spiritually. Yep. He said, made many terrible decrees on Jewish people. They can't, I think, keep Shabbos. They can't keep Rosh Chodesh, which is a very obscure one. That means the head of every month, we do a bit of small celebrations. Women don't generally do certain types of work on Rosh Chodesh, right? Bris Milah, which is much more significant. The circumcision, which is probably, if not one of them, if not, it's the fundamental commandment given to the Jewish people, which creates the relationship between us and God. Yeah, this is the covenant between us. Bris actually means a covenant. Yeah, the covenant between the Jews and Hashem. Our part of the covenant is by circumcising, and that's what gives us that connection. You see, it's connected with what the Greeks were trying to do. We're going to see why they tried to do it. There's so much here, as usual. Just trying to contain it. What else do they do? There's also a very, very strange one. Maybe we'll touch on this one as well. They made a decree. Doesn't sound very nice, but that any Jewish virgin girl who is a bride, who got married on the traditional day of Wednesday, right? The Jewish people, the Mishnah says the ideal date to get married is Wednesday, right? There's a number of reasons given. If anyone actually followed that custom, then they had a rule that she has to have an intimate relationship, basically be raped effectively, right? Unfortunately, by the Greek officer. Sounds very cruel. Newly married woman, and then her husband's not the first one to be with her. Very strange, but only if they're on Wednesday. Is it only if they were married on Wednesday? So they said they changed the day to Tuesday, and it didn't. It seemed to help, right? So yeah, it's a very strange decree, that, right? Right, and also they wrote on the sort of a horn which they used to give milk to the children. I don't have a portion with the God of Israel, right? And they stopped the study of Torah as well. People not being able to learn Torah. You're going to see something significant about all of these things, what they were trying to do. So we know, and maybe we'll speak about that significance of Alexander, what was going on, his bowing down to Shimon Hatzadik. And what exactly happened at that time. I think there's plenty to get on with. So let's start. So there's 2 things we have to speak about. One of them is, what is the difference between the Greeks and the Jewish people? And second of all, what happened at that time period where the Greeks ushered in a time period, whether it's them who did it or God changed it, as we'll see, the nature of people's perception of reality. It was such a fundamental change from before the Greeks until the Greek period, where the Anshe Kesagedola were. They're the ones who brought God's name back to his greatness. Right? It says that because throughout the exiles, which they had just been through, the exile of Babylon, Moses, in chapter 10, I think, in Deuteronomy, yeah, it says, God is the great one, the strong one, and the awesome one, right? And then different prophets, Daniel and Jeremiah, said, well, I call him the Keli Godel Hanora, the great one and the awesome one, but not the powerful one, because we're in exile. And another one said, oh, I can't call him Noah, I can't call him awesome, because we're being subjugated, his children are being subjugated, right? Right? And the Anshe Agdola, these men of the Great Assembly, which were around the time of the building of the Second Temple, and shortly after, until the time of the beginning of the Greek Empire started with Alexander, there's 120 sages. They said they instituted the daily prayers, right? Obviously, beforehand people prayed every day, but they instituted that we should have a fixed text to pray out of, and a fixed text for the blessings after the meals and blessings before eating food, right? You had to do that anyway beforehand, but everyone had their own way of doing it, so they actually fixed it in kedushos, vavdolos, brochos, right? So very interesting, and they said when you do the Shemona Esrei, which is the main part of the daily prayers, which is the prayer where we stand with our feet together, we speak quietly to God, we go through 19 blessings, right? In the first one it says Hakel, Hagodel, Akiva, Vanura, like Moses said, yeah, the one who is great, mighty, and awesome, right? So the question is, how could they say it? It's not being honest. Yeah, we know deep down it's true, but you can only. It's very important not to be two-faced, right? Not to be hypocritical. You can't say something where deep down you don't feel it's true, yeah, right? Even though you know, for example, in this world, on good things we say Baruch Hatov Ha'meitiv. Blessed is the one who does good and does good to others, right? Right? Who is good and does good to others. For bad things, like someone passes away, we say Baruch Dain Ha'emes. Blessed is the true judge, because we know everything you do is true. We can't call it good, because when something bad happens, our perception, that's bad, but we know deep down there's a good reason for it. Right? In the next world, where everything will be clear spiritually, we'll see we'll see the hand of God in everything directly, and we'll understand what God's doing. Even on bad things, we'll say Baruch Hatov Ha'meitiv, the one who's good and does good. Right? So we see that the Jewish attitude is that we know that everything's for the best, but you still got to act in a way which relates to the reality which you're in at that moment. Right? So those prophets, they knew that God was great, mighty, and awesome. They knew that. But I can't say it. It's just not being honest, because my reality. Sorry about this. Right. Okay. The reality which I'm in now doesn't show that, right? I can't see God is mighty when the enemies have just destroyed the temple. I can't say he's awesome whether his children, the Jewish people, are being subjugated amongst the nations. I can't say that. It's not being honest with myself. However, the Anshe Agdola, they said, no, you know where his greatness is, you know where his awesomeness is. Look, the Jewish people are in exile, right? They've been killed. They don't have a homeland, right? Right? And we are helpless. We don't have any natural way of surviving now, yeah? Usually when one nation gets chucked out their homeland and goes to another country, they assimilate into the other culture, and that's it. That's the end of their nation, their culture, usually. But look, and especially here, people wanted to destroy the Jews, right? Especially like Haman, right? Just about a generation before that. The Purim story, he tried wiping out all the Jews. But he said, look, God's protecting us. And Mordechai was the one at the time. Mordechai was the one of the saviors of the Jewish people there. in the time, and he was part of the Anshe Knesset Agadola. So he knew, he saw, look, we're in exile and God's still with us. He's still protecting us. It's a miracle. That's where you see the might and the awesomeness of God. On the contrary, you see even more now that God doesn't have to have everything nicely set up. Even in the most chaotic, dark periods of Jewish history, God's able to keep the Jewish people going. As we know, every generation people have tried to destroy the Jews. They've always been somewhere in the world, somewhere. Just look through history, it's astounding. Every generation there's been one people, and it's changed. So it's not just an everlasting enmity between us and, let's say, the Spanish or something like that, right? No, they had their turn. There's a few hundred years, the Spanish, or the Inquisitions, the Jewish people, they exiled them in the end. The Arabs now basically are the ones who try and destroy, or Islam, I should say more, right? Or radical Islam. Basically, there's a nation or ideology always trying to destroy the Jews. That's a miracle. That's the biggest miracle. Hopefully, we'll speak about that in our proof series, which I'm procrastinating over because I want to get it all right. So maybe I should just get on with it. Right? The fact that we survive supernaturally like no other nation, not even close, through constant persecution, that shows that God is in charge. And even when he's letting other nations be in charge, he's still the one manipulating events and making sure that we're okay. Right? So that's his might and his awesomeness. Right? In fact, that's related with the name Maccabi. Maccabi is the name of the family who fought against the Greeks well, let's finish the story. Right, so this Antiochus made all these terrible decrees, right, and a small band of Jewish rabbis, they were priests, the Maccabi family. They were actually the children of the second high priest after Shimon, who was called Yochanan. He was high priest for 80 years. Incredible, right? And they basically fought a guerrilla war against the great Greek army, which was occupying Israel at the time. There's a very small number, but they managed to miraculously drive them out. Right? And they're called the Maccabees. And we know that the name Maccabee is very interesting because it's the first letters of the verse in Exodus chapter 15, I think, or 16, is the one with the song on the sea. Right? Let's bring it up. Here we go. Right. Right. So this is chapter 15 in Exodus. This is after the Jewish people walked through the split sea. God miraculously split the Red Sea. And after they came out of it, they sang this song, very famous song. We sing it or say it every day in the prayers. And look at verse 11. Who is like you amongst the powerful ones? Hashem, that's God's name. Who is like you? Nedar Bakodesh, one who is exalted in holiness, maybe, or powerful in holiness. Nuras Hilos, Nura is awesome of praises. Oisefela, the one who does unspeakable things which you can't describe, basically, or miracles, performing wonders, it says here, right? But if you look at the word here, mi, it's a mem or an m sound, kamoicha, that's a k sound or ch sound, bo'ilim, that's a b sound, and Hashem, that's a y sound, right? We don't say God's name, but the little letter here, yud, right, tiny little, sort of like that shape, right, is a yud sound. So that actually spells Maccabi, right? So interesting. So who is like you, God, right? So the interesting thing is that the Talmud expands on this pasuk, on this verse, who is like you, God, It says, don't read it, Bo'elim, who is great amongst you out of the powerful ones, God? Saying that only God is powerful. Who is as great as a mute as you, God? Right? So there's no greater mute being than you, God. That means strange. Why calling God mute and the ultimate mute being? Yeah, because who's like you who can keep quiet when his children are being attacked and persecuted, right? And holds back and doesn't say anything, but yet you protect them all at the same time, right? That's what the Maccabees are all about. They're all about the idea that even though we're in the darkness, who is like you, God? You protect us, even though you're silent, right? Yeah. God's not doing open miracles anymore, but yet a small ragtag band of rabbis, right, drive out the Greek army. Incredible, right? And of course, there's the other part to the Chanukah story is that they didn't have any kosher oil because they'd all been contaminated by the Greeks, and the priest found one jar. Well, they found one jar with the high priest's seal on it, showing that it hadn't been tampered with. So they used that, but it was only enough to light the menorah, the candelabra, which was in the temple, which you have to light every night. It burns through the night. And they wanted to restart the temple services, right? But they only had one jar of oil. And it'll take them a week to go to the place where they can press some olives to get fresh kosher oil. So a miracle happened that they poured the oil in, and it lasted for 8 days. One jar of oil, which was only enough for one night, lasted a full 8 days. So that was the other miracle there. Okay, this idea of the miracle of the lights in the darkness. Again, you're going to see that a few times, hopefully. So we know the two aspects to the Greeks, which were the Greek Empire, which we have to speak about. One of them is they were trying to get us away from our spiritual reality. Other exiles didn't care about the spiritual so much; they just wanted to destroy us physically. Right? Here they want to destroy us spiritually. They don't learn Torah. Torah, we know, is the fundamental thing which keeps the Jewish people going. Without Torah, the Jewish people are nothing. They're gone, finished. It's our connection to God, which is through Torah. Torah teaches us knowledge about God, and also teaches us about how to bring God into the world through the mitzvahs, through the commandments. Right? The bris milah, the covenant, the circumcision, which is the idea of the covenant we have between us and God through the physical. We sanctify the most physical urges, right, which is represented by the place of the circumcision, right, the sexual drive, right, and we say no, we're going to lessen it. We're going to use that to show our dedication to God, right? Got many different ideas with that. We won't be able to go through all of them now, even some of them. The idea of Rosh Chodesh, new moon, the idea of the Shabbos, they were trying to stop, and this very strange thing that they forced the Jewish brides to be with a non-Jewish Greek officer before she consummated her marriage with her new husband, right? So what's going on here? So the Greeks, we know from last year, we spoke about the idea of two types of light. The light of the first day of creation, the light of the fourth day of creation. Light of the first day was not physical light. The light of the fourth day God created the sun, the moon, the stars, the luminaries in the heavens. That created a physical light, a light which shines on the surface of something. Whereas the light of the first day is the light of intellectual light, or the oragonos, or the light of the world to come, the light which the righteous who merit to go to the world to come get to experience that light. So in other words, if you remember of course we've got to go back to the very first lecture on this channel. This is the most fundamental one, I think, out of those first 3 keystone lectures. They're all fundamental in their own way. Is that the world to come is basically us being similar to God and us experiencing closeness with God because we're similar, therefore we're close, right? We become as much like God as is possible. So we experience what it's like to be God. So which means that we're very close to God, right? That closest to God is, in other words, the light of the first day. The light of the first day of creation is that light which emanates from God to us. That is the pleasure and the what's the word? The imminence which we have to God in the world to come. That's what this light is. And in fact, that this light is the light of the Torah. Right? This light is the light of the Torah. So one of the, I think this is a Zohar, one of the mystical, the main mystical works in the Torah, right, which deals with the Kabbalistic side about the spiritual aspects of creation. It says a very interesting statement. It says, "Kuch brichu yisrova raisachatu." Says Hashem, the Creator, the Jewish people, right? We're going to see how non-Jewish people also connect, but through the Jewish people, right? We've spoken about this before, right? If you remember the lecture about the 5th dimension, we spoke about that, I think, a bit there, about the idea that non-Jews can be righteous people, but they can't be holy. Holiness is something which is beyond just being a perfect being. It's something different. It's the idea of being able to bring God into the world and be totally nullified to God, basically. That's what holiness is. And totally separate and detached and transcendent over the physical world in such a way where there's no influence of the physical world at all. On the contrary, the physical world starts to transform into spirituality. That's a power the Jewish people have, is that we've got the power to imbue the physical with spiritual. Whereas the non-Jewish people, that's not their job. Their job is to make the physical itself good in the first place. So they sort of prepare the groundwork. They make the physical world a good world, right? And then the Jewish people do the second stage and they elevate the physical to the spiritual. They bring the awareness of God into the world and into that physical world. But you can't get that without having a physical world which is functioning correctly first. So that's why the non-Jewish people have 7 commandments to run a physical, moral, ethical world, right? Right. So this Zohar says that the Hashem, the Creator, the Jewish people, and the rice and the Torah chadu are one. What does that mean? Obviously, we're not one because they're 3 different things. So they can't be the same thing. But it means they're all connected with each other, right? They're all connected in such a way where they become. How do you explain this? Imagine you've got a cup. Let's say you've got a cup, like a black cup, and you pour this very sort of bright yellow liquid in it, right? Okay? Or like milk or something white, very, very bright, right? So you clearly see there's a cup and then there's the milk, right? Okay, so you've got to actually look in the cup to see the milk. If you have a glass instead, the glass lets you, it holds the milk in it, and at the same time it lets a person be able to perceive the milk on the inside. So the glass has an essential tool of revealing what's inside of it. So that's what's going on here. Right? The idea is that the Jewish people, and this is very connected to what we're going to speak about today, the Jewish people have got the ability to reveal God into the outside of them, into the outside world. Right? By doing that, they're essentially just an outer clothing, so to speak, for God's light. Right? So imagine if you look at me physically, right? If you understood what's going on here, you've got me, that's my soul, who I am, and you've got, but if I wouldn't be able to talk to you without a body, because I wouldn't have a tongue, or I wouldn't have a face where you can see my expressions and things like that. So the physical or the body is always a way of revealing an inner light, or inner spiritual reality, or the soul in this case. That's the idea of Kelim. The idea of Kelim, or vessels, or tools, are all there to reveal something else. Let's say you're building a cupboard or something, right? And you've got, let's say, one of these things behind me here, right? You've got these cupboards here, right? And then they were made with, like, you had a plank of wood here, you've got a few more thinner bits, you've got a few screws and stuff like that, right? And it's all meant to fit together, right? So, but it comes in a flat pack. Everything's sort of packed in this long, thin, all stacked up with each other. What creates? So why can't I just like open the box and now I've got a cupboard? Is because all the pieces are there already, but they're not in the right arrangement. You haven't revealed the harmony between all the pieces. What can reveal the harmony between the pieces? And instead of having everything flat, so you've got some things which are like this, some things are like that, right? You've got screws which go in here, things held together. You've got something called tools, or kelim, vessels. Vessels are conduits, right? Or tools. Right? The word kli, a vessel, it can mean two things. It can mean a tool or a vessel. It can either hold something, because holding something gives meaning to the thing inside. Let's say you pour some water into nothing, then you don't have the water. If you put it into a cup, now I can have the water because the cup facilitates that idea. The idea of being able to use the water, right? Same thing here with the flat packs and the cupboards or the shelves. Without a tool, without an Allen key, that's a little hexagonal pointed sort of like a mini screwdriver where we like screw these sort of ready-made screws in, right? Without the tool, this construction behind me wouldn't be able to come together, because this wouldn't be able to fit with this, that wouldn't be able to fit with this, because you need to screw this bit into there, that bit into there, this bit into here. So tools are basically ways where you can reveal the potential of numerous separate things and unify them together. So now the person looking at it can experience the potential of these seemingly independent bits, right? It's the idea of revealing the potential of something and bringing it into actualization. So the potential of all these woods is a cupboard, but it's not a cupboard yet. Tools transform the potential into an actual cupboard, or actual sort of like set of drawers or shelves. That's what tools do. Or a vessel can hold something in it, which reveals the potential of the highest, most expensive bottle of a wine, let's say, or whiskey. Yeah, you can't experience it. That can't be revealed to the person who wants to experience it without a cup, without a bottle. If you drink out of the bottle, yeah, it's not like the correct behavior, but maybe on Purim it's acceptable. But okay, listen to that lecture about Purim if you want to know about getting drunk on Purim. So the Jewish people, through the Torah is the light, and it's God's light. So basically, God connects through the Torah to the Jewish people. The Jewish people, by absorbing the Torah within them, they reveal the light of God into the world. So this light of the first day is essentially the light of the world to come, of God's light. Right? Remember, very important to go over the second Keystone lecture there about knowing the difference between God himself and God's revelation to mankind, and his expression and his connection. Two different things. Right? Like we said, there's a difference between a person himself and what you perceive of the person. That's through the light waves coming off him, but that's not the person himself. Right? So in God's case, God in himself doesn't change. He's above any change or definition. So all we can experience of God is through this conduit, or these sort of spiritual light waves which hit us, which give us experience and understanding and awareness of God. And that actually creates a real connection with God. That's the amazing thing about it. It's not fake. Just like if you're speaking to someone, you're having a real relationship with them. It's not fake relationship. It's not imaginary. It's not theoretical, philosophical relationship. You're having a real relationship with the person on the inside. Even though you never connect directly with it. It's only through these physical light waves and sound waves which are connecting the two of you together. That is the light of the first day. Now, on the sixth day of creation, Adam, right, my namesake, I guess, he sinned. He ate from the tree of knowledge he wasn't meant to, and he did that sort of halfway through the day. So there was, let's say, if you imagine the day starts from 6 o'clock in the evening till 6 o'clock in the evening, and 6 o'clock in the morning is when the daytime starts. So at 12 o'clock is when he woke up. He became a being. He sinned a couple of hours later, I think in 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think it was, right, according to the Talmud. And that was on a Friday, and the Sabbath came in at 6 o'clock, and he went out in exile. I think, I'm not sure actually, that's a good question. I'm not sure exactly when the exile was, but when the Sabbath came out, it was 6 o'clock in the evening the next night. Then he lost access to this special light, because the light of the first day was shining throughout the days of creation, and that means Adam experienced that light of the first day. So he experienced it for 6 hours on the Friday, and the whole 24 hours the light didn't go away. That's a special thing about the Sabbath. And he lost it on the way out, on the Motzi Shabbos, on the exiting of the Sabbath at 6 o'clock on the Saturday. That's where he rubbed two things together, stones together, created fire. I think that's why we do the tradition to do Havdalah when we do the prayer on the exiting of the Sabbath. We take a candle to commemorate the flame, the fire which Adam had, which is a physical fire, right? Interesting, because he lost that spiritual fire, he still had a physical one. And it's very interesting to notice, right? We're speaking about the difference between the first light of the first and the fourth day. The light of the first day, that's the Jewish light. That's a light of Panemius, of God's light. So we understand that light is spiritual. Yeah, the main light in the world is spiritual. The Greeks took the light of the fourth day, the superficial light, and that is looking at the world in a superficial way. and working out things just from the world of nature, which is apparent to us, not going beyond into the spiritual, invisible world of the metaphysical and the spiritual dimensions, which is the fifth dimension we spoke about in the previous lecture. Adam, however, had access to that light of the first day for 36 hours. And we know that when we light the Chanukah candles, the menorah, the candelabra, we light on the first night we light one candle, the second we light two, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you add all of those numbers together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you actually get 36. Amazing. So these 36 candles which we light throughout Chanukah actually correspond to the 36 hours which Adam experienced this light. So in other words, we are experiencing on our level the light of the first day on Chanukah. Maybe we don't feel it, we don't understand it, but that's what's actually going on. These candles, just little flames. They say that Kabbalistically it's very, very good to just sit there and just look at the candles. They have a profound effect on the person who just looks at the Chanukah candles, right? Because it connects them to that reality of the first day of creation, right? That light of the world to come. But it's more than that. It's not just the light of the world to come. There's something else going on. Something much deeper. And this connects with the third keystone lecture, the idea of Gilu Yichud, about the idea of God revealing that He is everything even through the evil itself. That even the evil will turn to good. So we spoke about this 2 time periods of history. Okay, we'll finish off on this, right? Hopefully, probably another 20 minutes. But before the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, before the men of the Great Assembly, the way that the world functioned, Jews and non-Jews, is there was a natural, a natural feeling, a natural instinct to connect to something higher. Right? We had prophecy. Yeah, as we said, the elders passed on the tradition of the Torah to the Nevi'im, the prophets. The prophets passed it on to the men of the Great Assembly. So something changed between prophets and the men of the Great Assembly. There was a change there. Prophecy means that I get clarity. I know exactly what God wants from me. God speaks to me directly. Right? Interesting thing happens when the prophets get a prophecy. The visions they have are so powerful. They're called seers because they can actually see the words, which, so to speak, and the message God's giving to them. It's right there with them. They have to travel up. Their body can't handle it. They collapse on the ground. With the exception of Moses, he was on such a high spiritual level. He was able to walk about while getting prophecy. Right? However, most of the other prophets, if not all of them, when they got prophecy, they collapsed on the ground in some sort of fit or something like that, yeah? Because the experience they had was too overwhelming. The body couldn't handle it. And when they woke up, they had in their mind, they translated the visions which they had into words which we can understand. Right? Because according to one opinion, I think the Ramchal says this, what they saw there were not the words which they said. They saw something which was indescribable with words, but they had to put it into words, otherwise God, you can't get the message from God, yeah? So they put it into precise words according to the way they perceived it. Okay? It wasn't just like me just trying to get the right word. They knew exactly the words to say but each prophet experience things through their own personality, so the way they describe it is going to be different, right? And obviously the visions they saw were different as well. So that explains the difference in the prophecies themselves, obviously. Now, the people, the men of the Great Assembly, are called sages. They're called chachomim, right? And it's very interesting. You never hear of a person having an opinion in Torah, in Torah law or anything, until the men of the Great Assembly, right? Beforehand, if you look through all the books of the prophets and in the Tanakh, you don't say, this person says this is the law in this situation. Yeah, you don't get it. And even if he does say it, it's not attributed to him. Because when a prophet has a prophecy, yeah, let's say one of the laws gets forgotten, right? So he has a prophecy, he tells it, yeah, this is the law, yeah, and you can see, and you can actually derive it from the text, whatever, right? A few times people got sfeikos, got doubts of what the law is, or they actually outright forgot the law, right? So certain laws, there's millions of laws. Okay, some of them are going to get forgotten if you don't do them often. Let's say some laws only come every few years, so by the next time it comes around, people might not remember all the details. So the prophecy helped them remember things, and also prophecies told people what to do, even if it wasn't a commandment in the Torah, right? Right, special times, whatever. Special situations, there's a prophecy, right? You should go and do war with this people. You should go and speak to that person, etc. Right? When it came to the sages, the Anshe Agdola, then you start having a very strange change, right? There's no more prophecy anymore, right? However, you do have Ruach HaKodesh, which is divine spirit, or which is a form of nevuah, which is a form of God talking to a person, which is what prophecy nevuah is, but it's different. Ruach HaKodesh, people even today get it. They get sort of a knowledge that something is true, and maybe they can't describe it as someone speaking to them, but there's some sort of subtle knowledge that they know something, right? Well, I don't know. Maybe it happens different with different people. But that's Ruach HaKodesh, is the Holy Spirit. Now, this happens generally through people who study Torah, put a lot of effort into learning Torah, like the Vilna Gaon, the Gro, the Elijah from Vilna, 250 years ago, we mentioned many times, a great genius and a very righteous person as well, great Kabbalist. He says that if you want to make a decision and you want to know that it's God telling you this is the right thing to do, and you just don't know what to do, one of the ways of doing it is study Torah 3 hours straight, and as soon as you stop, and then think of the question, and whatever comes into your head, that's going to be the right thing. Because what you're doing is when you learn Torah, you're bringing, like we said before, the light of the Torah is the light of God coming into you. So you study for 3 hours straight. So all your mind is full of is the light of God. So you can actually get some sort of message from God. Some people say 6 hours, I think. I can't remember. I remember it as 3 hours. So this is... but this happens through the effort of the one who's studying. So you've got two types of prophecy, essentially. You've got prophecy of the prophets, where when they received it, it just flattened them, right? And that was called seeing. They're called the seers, right? But now you have to be tzorch lishmoya divrei chachamim. Now we have to hear the words of the wise people. Now the wise people, they hear something. They don't see it. The prophecy they get after studying, let's say, any section of the Torah for 3 hours, right? Or maybe over many years, you got one of the great sages in the generation, they've been spending their whole life learning Torah. They might not see clearly a message from God, but they can hear something quiet at the back of their mind telling them this is the right thing to do here, right? And it's not something which they're guessing. They've got, no, this is definitely the right thing to do. I can't necessarily explain it, but this is the right thing to do. This is what the law is in this case, right? And then maybe later on he'll explain why technically it's the correct thing to do. But the interesting thing is, you don't go to yeshiva, a Jewish study hall, right, or academy, and suddenly see people study for 3 hours and suddenly they collapse on the floor and they're just having visions. You don't get that. Because the persons put effort into getting the light into them, the light becomes a natural part of them. Whereas the prophets, when they got their prophecy, the prophecy was detached from them. They could be holy people, but you don't work for a prophecy. You just have to be a very holy person. You meditate, and then if God decides to give you a message, he does. If he doesn't, he doesn't. So therefore, there's no correlation between the effort put in for a certain prophecy and the actual experience of the prophecy. They're two disconnected things. There's a nice allusion to this. There's a deeper idea of where we see the idea of the Chocham Odef Minovi idea, that the sage is greater than a prophet. We see a beautiful Gemara, I think it's Lamed Beis in Menachos, page 32 in the Tractate Menachos, which deals with the laws of the flower offerings in the temple, right? Lots of different things come into every tractate. So there's a story where Moses goes up to God to learn the Torah. This is the Oral Torah, because the written one given much later, 40 years later. So the Oral Torah is all the details, all the millions of laws associated, all the details associated with the hundreds of thousands of laws we have. And God takes him, he sees God doing something very strange. He sees that God is taking, so to speak, right? This is Agada, so it's the ideas which we're focusing on. He's taking the letters and he's taking crowns of the letters. He's tying them onto the letters. Maybe we can show what they look like. Maybe here we go. Just found something here. Right. So these are the Hebrew letters, and you see on some of the letters. Interesting. Okay. You've got these sort of crowns on the Gimel, the third letter here. You've got the three crowns there. On the Daled and the Hey, you've got one crown. The base, you've got one crown. You've got three here. There's a rules. Some of them don't have any crowns, like the Aleph. Some of them have one crown. Some of them have three crowns. Okay. So he sees God taking the crowns and tying them onto the letters. They say, why are you doing that? He said, because one day there's going to be a great sage, a Chocham. Remember, the greatest out of all prophets was Moses. So he typifies, he's a paradigm of what a prophet is. Okay? Yeah? He represents the concept of a prophet. He said there's going to be a sage many years in the future, many centuries in the future, called Rabbi Akiva. I might have mentioned him before, the greatest out of all the Jewish sages of the Mishnah period. Right? He lived just after the destruction, during and after the destruction of the Second Temple. Okay. So he's going to be able to take these letters, the crowns on the letters, and derive piles and piles of laws just from the crowns. Boom. Mind-boggling. How on earth can you learn? Okay, there's certain techniques, there's certain significances of different letters and what the crowns represent, but hundreds and thousands of laws from the crowns, that's incredible. And Moses says, you got to show me this person. This is incredible. I want to see this. So God takes him into the future, right? He sits him down 8 rows back. Deep idea in that. 8 rows back. 8. The number of transcendents. Number of Chanukah, by the way. Chanukah is 8 days. So he's 8 behind Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva is right at the front. Moses on the 8th row. And he sees Rabbi Akiva saying all of this. And he's darshaning, he's deriving from this crown, that crown of the letter, etc. And Moshe's just sitting there, stunned. I don't have a clue what he's talking about. What is this? Right? What's he doing? And so Hashem says, yeah, keep you listening. And then one of the pupils asked Rabbi Akiva a question. Yeah, you're saying this and this and this, but how do you know that? You're deriving everything from this point. You haven't proved that point. Oh, that's halacha l'Moshe Messina. That is a law which we have as a tradition all the way back from Moses at Sinai. And when Moses heard that, he felt all better, right? Oh, why is he feeling better now? Yeah, okay, right. So, okay, I haven't been completely forgotten. No, but what's going on here? This is a very, very deep idea, and this is really comes down to what the Chanukah idea is that the idea of tying crowns onto the letters means you're attaching something which should be above, right, which should be transcendent, and you're attaching it to the letter. That means, in terms of what a person will be, you've got the person, you've got his prophecy coming in. A prophet, the prophecy is never part of the prophet, it's something external to him. So it comes in, the body has to deal with it and cope with it for that short time period, and then the prophecy leaves, and then he can function like a normal human being again. Right? Why is that? Right? Because he never earned the prophecy. The prophecy never became part of him, because you don't get anything without putting work into it. Like the very first Keystone lecture. Right? We have to use our free will to bring God into us. We have to put the effort to bring God into us, and then we become like God. We start to manifest God. We become godly people, right? Because we got that light which emanates from God inside of us, right? Which is the light of the Torah, right? That's how a chacham does it. That's how a wise person does it. A sage does it. He studies, and because he's put the effort in, that light which comes in, he's earned it. If he's earned it, it's part of him. So therefore he can walk around and say his Torah without collapsing on the ground, because it's not a contradiction to his physical body, because his physical body was part of the effort to bring down the Torah into himself. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful idea. Whereas a prophet, he didn't earn it, so therefore it doesn't become part of him. So Moses has a look, he represents all prophets, he looks at the crowns, and he says, the crowns belong above, detached from the letters. So he said, no, because there's going to be a person, Rabbi Akiva, who's a sage, a chacham, and he's going to be able to deriving this idea of hearing. I hear something deeper, right? I don't see it, all I see is a letter, right? But let's think, what does this letter represent? What does it represent? What's the meaning behind it? What are the associated ideas? Wow, then I hear something. So on one level, you can say that the prophet's going up to a high level spiritually and seeing the reality, whereas the chacham stays down here and he understands with his mind what's higher, and he can get even higher than a prophet because of that, in terms of the levels of knowledge he gets, because he's being able to experience things beyond what a prophet can see, because a prophet can only go up so far, otherwise it could completely be destroyed, right? Whereas a wise person, you can go as high as you want, as long as it makes sense, right? Because you're still down here in this world. You're drawing down the deep ideas, and you're making them attached to your body, the place of darkness, the light which shines through the darkness. Remember what we said about Kelim, vessels? Vessels are the things which reveal what's inside them. Okay? I hope putting all this together. I can't speak everything out, but hopefully you got the idea. So this is Rabbi Akiva, right? And why was Moshe happy at the end? So he didn't understand, and why was he so confused? Why didn't he understand what's going on? Because Moshe, when he learnt Torah from Hashem, from God, everything was crystal clear. He saw everything. He saw it. He saw the reality. Everything's good. There's no darkness. Yet there's nothing uncertain which I have to clarify. Right? It just is. Whereas Rabbi Akiva, he was in a time where already this phenomenon of forgetting Torah had happened. So therefore you have to use your intellect to derive or rederive or try working out how you get this commandment from this. Which verse does this commandment come from? We have a tradition, this is true, but where did it come from, right? So he works things out through pure effort and through using your mind, your intellect, to put the pieces together, to derive and to prove this must be the place it comes from, right? Because everything has to be proved. In the when we learn the Talmud, the Gemara, we're trying to everything has to be. I've got an argument with my friend about what's the meaning of a certain passage in the Talmud, right? Because I think it's this, and he said, I think it's that. Okay, fine, right? So, well, I'm cleverer than you. No, you don't do that. You have to prove it to your opponent, right? It has to be rock solid. So you two study partners sharpen each other because they cover over that. Each one of them's got some level of lack of clarity of what the truth is. So each one sort of like sharpens the other. He cuts down that. No, that bit you've got wrong. Okay, fine. But you can't be right because that doesn't sound right. Okay, fine. So they go into a higher level of understanding. They're deepening their understanding. They're letting the light come in deeper into their consciousness. That knowledge, the thing which they're trying to understand, that aspect of Torah, whatever it happens to be, whether it's a Jewish law or philosophy or whatever it is, or Kabbalah, right? As they're working deeper, and then eventually they get the revelation, right? So this is what's happening with Rabbi Akiva. Moshe doesn't understand that because everything's clear to start off with. But Rabbi Akiva is showing that even when times are not clear, you can still get back to the Torah. You can still reveal the Torah in the darkness, through the darkness. Through the problems, that's how you get to a high level. If you go to any Talmudic academy, any yeshiva, you'll see people arguing there. And the person at the end of a 5-hour session, he says, I got a beautiful chiddush, I got a nuance, a novelty, which no one's thought of before. I think this law depends on this logical principle, right? Which no one associated the two things before, and that makes everything make sense. And he's shining. Well, how did he get there? He got there because he had a problem with this, he had a problem with that, and there's darkness here, darkness that, and because he's trying to clear through the darkness was a conduit to the light of the knowledge which comes in the end. It's only because of the problems that the person was able to grasp the amazing new idea in the Torah, right? It's a living thing. The Torah is a living thing, right? It's the light from God, and God is the source of life, right? That's what the fight between the Greeks and the Jews were. And that's the difference between the Greeks and before the Greeks and after the Greeks. Before the Greeks was a time of prophecy. So what's the time of prophecy mean? That means all we have to do is subjugate ourselves to a higher reality, right? And of course there has to be an opposite to that. There has to be a corresponding negative option because we have to have free will. So we could have prophecy. I want to subjugate myself to God, so go to a prophet. But there has to be an equal desire to subjugate yourself to something else, to the dark side. That's called avodah zarah. That's called idolatry. Okay. Now we know they happened at the same time. If you look through the books of the Tanakh, we saw the major problem of the Jewish people through centuries, especially the time of the periods of the first temple, which was 400 years after they came into Israel. Well, it was actually later, right? 480 years. Then they built the first temple that was lasted for 410 years. But you saw that whole time period. If you look at the books of the prophets, from Joshua until the 12 prophets, I think in the non-Jewish Bible, it's probably Malachi, I think is probably the last one, right? Yeah, you see that they had problems with idolatry. Very strange. They had prophecy. Why were they serving idols? Because God made such a powerful evil drive to accept something else to be subjugated to. That happens through corruption of a person's midos, their characteristics. Habits through ego. We spoke a lot about idolatry in the adultery lecture. It's the idea of wanting to be subjugated to something else because really you want it to be subjugated to you. It's an egotistic way of being subjugated to something else. We say it's very similar to the way that the negative aspect of the Arabs, the Muslims, right? We spoke about that in one of the Armageddon lectures. There's the idea that we want to be subjugated to something higher. So you got prophecy to help you do that, but there has to be something equal and opposite to give you free will. So it had a very powerful desire to serve idols. And idol worship is essentially subjugating yourself to something higher, but something from the dark side, something which isn't God, something which is apart from God. Now, it got so bad at the destruction of the first temple that they just couldn't handle it anymore. The men of the great assemblies prayed to God. They said, look, this avera, this sin of idolatry was so damaging, it corrupted the Jewish people enough that God had to destroy the temple in order to punish or whatever the reason was. But it's still burning within us, right? People are still falling for this sin of idolatry. It's destroyed the temple. Was it going to destroy us completely? So they prayed that God gets rid of this very powerful desire and drive for idolatry, and they succeeded. But because of that, now there's imbalance in the world. Because there's no avodah zarah in the world, there's no drive for accepting a false power upon yourself. Therefore, the drive and the ability to accept God upon yourself also has to disappear. That's why prophecy disappeared at that time. Yeah, because remember, we're talking about the Necessitates. The whole world's changing now. Right? The reality of not just the Jews, mankind. Right? The Persians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, all idolatrous nations. They all served their idols. Right? They're all accepting something bad above them. Sometimes it could be good. Sometimes they did believe in God or serve God to the exclusion of other forces. Even some non-Jews we know also believed just in God, right? The righteous amongst the nations. But now that disappears. Now we don't have the negative accepting something upon you, so we have to lose the positive one as well. So we lose prophecy at the same time. So the Anshe Knesset Gedola were the end of the first temple. So they were the ones who ended Avodah Zarah, and they ended prophecy. In fact, the last three prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, were part of the Anshe Knesset Gedola themselves. The last prophets, right? And then you have Mordechai, who's kind of a prophet as well. The book of Esther is written by him, right? So he had some sort of level of prophecy there. But then the same group of 120 people, you have Shimon Hatzadik, the first person to say something of his own opinion, right? The second Mishnah in Avos, he actually says something. Shimon Hatzadik Omer, Shimon the righteous says, who was from the leftovers, the remnants of the men of the Great Assembly. He used to say this, right? This is his own thing which he felt through his connection to the Torah, was his expression of what he felt Torah, what this idea was, right? It came from him. On three things the world stands. The world stands on three fundamentals, pillars. Torah, studying of Torah, avodah, serving God, that means prayer or the sacrifice in the temple, subjugating yourself to God, and gimnas chasan, doing kindness, which we understand the kindness one because that's being similar to God. Torah we understand as bringing the light of God. The idea of avodah, subjugating yourself to God, right? That idea of letting God be the main thing and you be just a vessel to reveal God in the world. So that's his take on the world. And all the sages afterwards in Tractate Avos, they all had their own opinions about the philosophy of life, right? And what they felt was important. But that all came from their own personal opinions now. Because now you've transitioned to the time where there's no prophecy, where there's no just let God tell you everything and you don't have your own opinion. Now you've got to work from yourself. Every person's different. Every vessel is a different color, different shape, a different material. So every person's got their own filter where they can express the ideas of the Torah through who they are. It's a personal thing. The light becomes part of them. The light becomes expressed through who they are. The crowns get attached to the letters. That's Rabbi Akiva. Moses said to Rabbi, I don't understand what he's saying. The Torah should be clear, right? So no, so I don't understand why he's going through all this thing. Why does he need to go through it? Because it's darkness. That's why he has to go through all this expanding and deriving and exegesis from the crowns on the letters. Because it's not going to, the Torah is not always going to be clear. If you go into exile, you don't have access to a perfectly preserved tradition. So you have to have tools in order to get them back. And the tools are clear. And those are passed down, and we don't lose those. The tools we always keep, right? That's why we go to any yeshiva. We've got the same tools as they had thousands of years ago. Yeah, the same methods of thinking about things. It's basically just straightforward logic, really. Mainly. A few other things which are key pieces of knowledge as well. Yeah, you can only really learn from a teacher, I guess. An experience. But so Rabbi Akiva kept learning and then teaching, and his student asked him, "But where do you get this from? You're basing your whole building on this point. Where do you get that from?" That's halacha Moshe Messina. That's a halacha which is a law which was given all the way back from Sinai from Moses. So Moses felt happy. Why? Why is he feeling happy? Because he's realizing that the Torah which Rabbi Akiva is getting is not a new Torah, right? He's just expressing that original light through himself. Yeah, it's not necessarily something new. It's just the same light of God which comes through the Torah, but instead of being clear, it's being revealed through that original light. That law which was taught to Moses is now being revealed through a new vessel. So it's the same light. So Moses felt happy. So, right, okay, this is Torah, and this is not just Torah. This is a new facet of Torah which we wouldn't have had if it wasn't through the darkness. Okay, let's get back. Keep jumping backwards and forwards because I'm trying to juggle everything in my head. So that's before the period of the Anshe Knesset Gedolah. They had prophecy and idolatry, the two opposites. They also had the idea of Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah. That means the Torah. All the Torah we had, even the laws, were conceptually Torah Shebechsav. They were written Torah because everything was clear. Something which is written is clear. If I'm arguing what something says, so no, I think it says this. No, I think it says this. Well, stop arguing. Read it. Oh, it says that. Right. So you were right or I'm right. But if we're arguing about what's the meaning behind something or what did someone else say, that's not clear. In the time of prophecy, if they had that type of doubt, they'd just have prophecy and God would tell them what the correct answer is. Now we don't have that, so we have to derive it ourselves. So now we get the true oral law. This is what Torah Sheba'al Peh is. Torah Sheba'al Peh is you're taking the light of the written law and you're bringing it through your own mind, through your own creativity, through your own midas, as long as you do it properly according to the rules, and you bring out new aspects of the Torah, right, even sometimes things which might not have been explicitly spoken about at Sinai. For example, you've got certain questions nowadays which would not have been relevant even 100 years ago. What do you do in a case of a heart transplant? Can you put a pig's heart into someone? Is it a problem? Whatever, yeah? So that's pretty simple. So you work out what's the source that pigs are a problem. And you see it's only, okay, is it a problem of having benefit? Is it a problem of eating it only? So, it's not a problem of having benefits, so therefore you could put a heart in. Does it do any spiritual damage? That's a different question. That's a metaphysical, Kabbalistic question. Maybe that's a different issue. Right? What do you do in space? When do you keep Shabbos in space? What do you mean space? You don't. That's not real, right? Right? Until 50 years ago, people couldn't imagine being outside of the world and it being daytime constantly, because you got sight of the sun the whole time, yeah, because the Earth is down there, and the Earth might be spinning on its axis, but it's not affecting you up here because you're not on the Earth anymore. So therefore, it's always daytime. So how do you work out when the next day is? When do you celebrate the Sabbath? When do you do the morning prayers, the afternoon prayers, the evening prayers? Yeah, when do you say the Shema? Yeah, you're going to say the Shema, the declaration of dedication to God and love of God. You're meant to do that once in the morning, once in the evening. Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. When do you do that? Right? Right? So then you have to take the laws which are already there, and you have to understand deeply what's the reason behind that law, the reason behind that law. Is it relevant to our question? And if you see it's relevant to our question. So therefore it will turn out that, according to this opinion, the Sabbath would be determined on maybe what time it is in Israel or something like that, because maybe Israel is the center of the world, or whatever it is. I don't know. I'm just making things up off the top of my head here. But I'm just showing you the thought process which might go into working out new things which weren't there before. So now, essentially, what you have a revelation of Torah Sheba'al Peh, of Torah of the oral law. There's two Torahs which were given to Moses. The written one, which was at the end of the 40 years, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Yeah, those 5 books. That was written down, as it says in the book of Deuteronomy near the end, chapter 31, I think, right? Some of that. God told Moses to write down the Torah, right? But until then, it was all oral teaching from Moses, right? Besides the 10 Commandments, that was from God directly. Then Moses went up and taught them the actual details, the oral law, right? So you had the oral law beforehand, but you've got a new facet of the oral law now. Because what is the oral law? Essentially, even at the time of Moses, the written law was there, no doubt. The oral law was showing you, right, this verse you learn 500 different laws from. Right, from this word you learn this and this and this and this. From that word you learn this. From this group of words you learn this rule and that law. This one. This one you can barely get it from. You just have to accept that this is one of the rules, right? As I have commanded you, slaughter the animal as I have commanded you. But we don't see in the Torah written down anywhere where Hashem commands us the rules of shechita, of a ritual slaughter, to make something kosher, an animal kosher to eat. Right? So that's all. So the oral law is basically a revelation, or giving us the ability to experience the written law. The written law is there, but it doesn't talk to us necessarily so easily. Few laws you can get out just by the literal translation. But there's so many things which are confusing, like the laws of slaughtering, or don't do any melacha on the Sabbath day. What's melacha? Work? Does that mean I can pick up heavy objects? Can I turn a light switch on? Yeah, you can pick up a heavy object, you can't turn a light switch on. Why? Right, because you have to know what melacha is. There's 39 types of constructive work. Yeah, it has to be making a change in the object, right? Right, we're not getting into that now. But that's what the oral law really is. Oral law is an expression, or it's a clear vessel to reveal the inner light of the written law. Okay? Okay, so you're getting the idea, hopefully now, right? So before the time of the Anshe Knesset Gedola, the Minhag Great Assembly, you have the idea of prophecy, and you have the opposite of prophecy, which is idolatry, all connected with the idea that we receive something from above, and we don't insert ourselves into the equation at all. So therefore, everything is Torah Shebechsav, everything is coming down in the conceptually as a written law, because everything's written and clear. And that's Moses, the prophets. And when you have, after Shimon Hatzadik, he starts saying, I can reveal Torah through myself. Listen to what I've got to say, right? And remember, Shimon Hatzadik was the one who met Alexander. Now a different reality of the world's happening now. Now the idea is that the higher worlds are cut off from us. There's no prophecy anymore, and there's no natural drive or awareness of the higher spiritual forces to turn away from God, to go after them, right? To be seduced from the true way, to follow other higher beings, because we don't have a clue what those negative higher forces are in the first place, right? Right? So therefore the whole drive for avodah zarah, idolatry, is not there anymore either. So what drives us now, right? So we don't. Our reality now is the superficial. We don't see beyond. We don't see with the light of the first day anymore. We see the light of the fourth day. We see things superficially. Science. Who invented science? The Greeks. The Greeks are the ones who look at Yoifi, B'nai Yefes Yavon, right? The children of Japheth is Yavon, right? Or the Greeks, the father of the Greeks. Yefes means Yofi, beauty, like we spoke about last year. I suggest you go back to the first Chanukah lecture we did a year ago. We had to know much more detail about this. Yavon is all about external beauty, right? But not just external beauty physically, which they did believe in. Look at the physical, superficial beauty of the human body. But look at the beauty of the human mind. Look at science, philosophy. They were philosophers, scientists, right? They saw the harmony, the beauty of the natural world. Because now we're in a time period where what's apparent to mankind is the physical world. The spiritual world we don't have contact with, so therefore we don't have a natural awareness. Therefore nowadays, you speak to an atheist, you have to prove him with logic that there's a God. Whereas really, naturally, everyone should be aware of a higher being, a higher spiritual presence, through your sixth sense of spiritual sensitivity, but we don't have that now. You can get it back, just like some people can get back the desire for idolatry, but it's not natural anymore. Because the way we look at things is we look at things on the physical level. So therefore, what's the pinnacle of creation, or if they even call it creation, of reality? Mankind, with the top. So therefore, it's all about ego now. And rejecting any other power above us. So at the time of idolatry and prophecy, there was a natural tendency to accept a higher being. Now the natural tendency is, to have an ego, to see yourself as everything. Yeah? Selfishness is spiritually, there's nothing above us, right? Whereas what our job is, for the Jews, what's the positive side of that? Is to accept God's presence through the body. Don't ignore the body anymore like a prophet does, where his body just collapses on the ground. Now the body has to be part of the answer. So the body, we use the body and the mind and work hard, right, to understand the Torah. So now the Torah is Torah Sheba'al Peh, is the oral law. Now the Torah only gets revealed through our effort. As it says in the Medrash, it brings a verse, the people who were going through the darkness saw a great light. And that's referring to the oral law. Because the idea is you can only get to that great light only through the darkness now. And that's what the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah were doing. Yeah? They're saying God is great and mighty and awesome. Why? Because of the darkness. Because we see the darkness, naturally that should be the end of the Jewish people. But yet he's still keeping us going. We see the light penetrate the darkness. When we learn Torah now, that light which is hidden is only revealed through our physical bodies. And that's the purpose of creation. The purpose of creation is that we should get our bodies to be part of revealing God in the world. It's beautiful. So Chanukah is such a special mitzvah. In fact, the Rambam says, Mitzvahs Chanukah chaviva hi ma'oid. It's very strange for the Rambam, Maimonides, in his law codex, called Yad HaChazaka, or Mishnah Torah. Yeah, he goes through all the mitzvahs in the Torah in detail. And when it comes to Chanukah, he says it's a very special, precious mitzvah. Yeah, I'm not sure. There's some explanations on it, but you can hear why it's so special now, because this is the mitzvah. The mitzvah is the connection with God. It's chaviva, it's precious, because this is the one which reveals that light of the first day, those 36 hours, those 36 candles, the 36 hours where Adam experienced the light of the first day. And he revealed the light through, and then we now, in the world of darkness, the world where nature is dominant, we are able to use nature or use our physical body to reveal God, right? So beforehand, right, let's put it like this. Before this time period, prove God's existence to me, prove he is good, prove whatever. So, well, he is. You can just feel it, right? So the physical world was kind of feeling a bit lonely. So, okay, what's the point of me then, right? How am I going to reveal God in the world? But now that the physical world, the superficial world, the light of the fourth day, it's very interesting that. The light of the fourth day, because there's 6 millennia. This happened in the fourth millennia, which corresponds to the fourth day of creation. Interesting, where the superficial light came. I wonder if there's a connection. I never thought of that. It was in that it was in that millennium when that happened. Wow, interesting. Yeah, because the year 2448 was when the Jews came out of Egypt. 2488 they came into the land of Israel, and what was it? 850 years later was destruction. So that's about the year 2488 to 3338. So the destruction was 3338, right? So bang in the middle of the fourth day, so to speak, because each day does correspond to a different millennium. Wow, interesting. And I realized that. Yeah, so this day, or this reality where things are looked at as in a superficial way, where the reality is nature, the Greeks take the negative part of that. They say, and that's all the world is now. The Jewish people have said, no, take this and use it to reveal a higher reality. That's Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral law, where you reveal the Torah through listening, through working, through chochom, through being a sage, attaching the crowns to the letters. That's the reality we're in now. And that's a battle between us and the Greeks. Right? Which light is the real one? The light of the fourth day or the light of the first day, which we're going to reveal in the darkness. In your reality, the Greeks, your world of darkness, we can reveal something positive. Alexander. Yeah? Non-Jewish name? Yeah? So you think, oh, non-Jewish, Greek, darkness has got nothing to do with it. No, we can take something of the darkness and make it holy. We can take the name Alexander and make it a Jewish name, a Hebrew Jewish name. We can make it the spiritual source of a Jewish soul. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful, astounding ideas. Obviously, almost none of them on my own, obviously, except the ones where you hear me saying like, "Oh wow, I never thought of that." Okay, so I'm getting the Torah Shabbal Peh now. I'm getting the revelations through my effort and through my talking out. Yeah, that's the key. Talking is expression. You bring it out into the physical, right? So other people can hear it, as opposed to just thinking in your head. Speaking out does it. Now we can understand. Right, sorry. So let's look at the structure again. Beautiful, nice symmetry here. You've got prophecy, idolatry, and Torah Shabbat, the written law. Reality as it's apparent, overpowering this physical world. It's just, reality is reality. There's no us. We're definitely subjugated to something, but to what? To good or to bad? And the reality of the Torah itself is open. It's clear. When it comes to the Anshe Knesset Gdola, after that changed, after Avodah Zorah went away, and then prophecy went away as well with it, and we don't have the clarity because of that. Don't have prophecy to give us clarity in Torah as without effort anymore. So therefore, everything has to happen through effort. Everything is in the physical world. We're cut off from that spiritual transcendent level. We're stuck in the physical world, the world of seven, of nature. 7 days. Okay? We're stuck in the world of seven. So what do? The Greeks say, we're happy in the world of seven. Let's create a whole complex system and philosophy, a world philosophy of science, looking at the physical world, intellectual, deriving deep things about reality, laws of nature which lie behind nature, but a transcendent being, where we have to transcend the physical world? No transcending the physical world. The physical world is all there is. And we say, no, there is light in the physical world. We can transcend it. We can go above the level of 7. We can go to 8. That's Chanukah, the 8 days of Chanukah. Amazing. 36 candles, 36 hours, because of the 8 days, right? And it's also 8 days you transcend. That's what Bris Milah is. Now we understand what the different... we can transcend, right? And on the contrary, that's Torah Shabbal Peh. That's the oral law, the law which comes out from the mouth, so to speak, through the physical body, is now a filter and a revelation. Like we said, with the tools, reveal the potential of something. Now we reveal that potential light of the Torah, and it actually has an effect on this world, and it affects our body. Our bodies change. Our bodies become holy and infused with the light of Torah. That's why a person can study any subject. It doesn't change them fundamentally, only intellectually. When a person studies Torah for enough time, it actually changes them on the fundamental level. They become holier people, better people, just by studying. Obviously, you've got to put that into practice, and you've got to make sure you're studying for a good reason. Yeah, obviously, a person can study for a negative reason. That's corruption, right? Now we understand what are those 5 things that the Greeks were trying to stop the Jewish people doing. And we understand what the battle is now. Let's start off with circumcision. Circumcision is... Right? Start with the circumcision. Circumcision is on the 8th day, which represents, this is something which connects us with God. This is our connection with God, circumcision. We take something physical and we use the physical to connect with God. Right? Circumcision. And that is our bond with God. Right? Besides all the spiritual things which happen at that time of the circumcision, different lights come down, wherever spiritual lights. Yeah. Everything's got deeper meaning. We just focus on the basic ideas, because I'm sure you're all thinking about that, because you're well versed in the Kabbalistic texts, everyone. Right? Sabbath, Shabbos. Shabbos is, we know that was the day which testified that God created the world. What the Greeks try to say, the nature is nature in itself. There's no transcendent being which created the world. Shabbos testifies to that, right? What were the other things the Greeks tried to do? They tried to stop us learning Torah. They liked the Jewish culture. It's very interesting, quaint customs and stuff like that. Just like any other nation. Very, very nice anthropology and stuff like that. But what are the Jewish people? Why are you learning Torah? You're trying to bring a spiritual message into the world where you can change the physical world? You want to change the physical world based on a spiritual, transcendent, beyond physical, beyond nature reality? You can't do that. That's what Torah is. Especially Torah Sheba'al Peh. The oral law, where you're trying to bring out through the physical world, using the physical world to reveal a higher being, that we can't have. That's antithetical to the Greek philosophy, like we said, which is everything is just nature. Then you have Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh celebrates the new moon. The moon was created on the fourth day. So we're using something on the fourth day as a celebration. And what's the idea of the new moon? There's many ideas. I can't really sum them up now. The idea of the new moon is the idea that the moon is meant to be a reflection of the sun. Right? We spoke about this, about the sin of Adam, I think, once. Right? The moon wanted to be one of the two kings, the sun and the moon. Right? But the moon has to realize its place. You're not an ego. You can't have ego. You have to be subjugated to the light of the sun, just like Jewish people have to be subjugated to God, and just be a reflection. You want to see the light of the sun at night time in the darkness, you have to have a moon which reflects, which reveals the sun in the darkness. That's what the moon is. And we celebrate the new moon because that's when the moon starts to get its light back. That light, which it's meant to reveal from another place, from a higher place. And the idea of getting married on the fourth day, according to Rabbi apparently just saw this yesterday. One of the reasons is because on the fourth day, the moon was created. The moon is the idea of being a revelation of the light of the sun. When a woman gets married, that creates a partnership similar to God and the world, or God and humans, the soul and the body. We spoke about this in the quintessential paradigm lecture. All these pairs. The woman's meant to be one who reveals the potential of the husband. Right? She encourages him to bring out his creativity in the world. She's the one who gives him the physical stability to be able to express himself. Right? And many other ways. It just goes on and on, but just as two examples where you can see this idea of what marriage is. So the Greeks didn't like that. You're getting married on the fourth day to represent this idea of subjugation to higher power, and you're bringing out the higher power, right? Not nice to say like men are higher power, but you, in the parallel, in the paradigm anyway, right? And you want to reflect that? No. So go to another thing instead. Go be with another man. Go with a Greek first. Subjugate yourself to a Greek philosophy, not to a Jewish philosophy. A Greek husband as opposed to a Jewish husband. Right? And they wrote on the horns where they fed the children, you don't have a place in the Elokei Yisrael, and the God of the Jews. Again, saying that you can have your traditions and everything. We're not going to stop you doing certain commandments or whatever, but don't do those ones which fundamentally contradict the idea that the world is only physical and natural. Yeah, you're saying through all these commandments and this tradition of marrying on the Wednesday, right, that Torah, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, they all indicate the idea that of revealing the light through the darkness. And that's why we like the Chanukah candles at night time, in the darkness, and we're in the exile now. Who is like you amongst the mute people of Hashem? Right? Is that even in the darkness, you're great, and you're mighty, and you're awesome. The Unchained Knesset HaGedolah said that, because they were already in the period where darkness started, when nature starts to take over, and this is where we see God's greatness. Only through the darkness, primarily through the darkness. He puts us into exile. He makes us suffer and be persecuted by the non-Jews, and he still keeps us going and thriving amongst the other nations who hate us. And we still thrive there. Absolute miracle through the darkness. So the darkness and the nature become vessels to reveal the higher light, which is, as we said in the very third Keystone lecture, that is the purpose of creation. To reveal that God is all-powerful even over the powers of evil and darkness. They're just there to reveal a higher form of the light, which you wouldn't have got otherwise. Just like Moses was smiling when Rabbi Akiva revealed that all of his work was to reveal that higher light, that Torah which was given to him at Sinai, to Moses at Sinai. Okay, have a happy Chanukah, everyone. I hope you have a bright Chanukah. And there's so much I didn't say there, but hopefully you, through your Torah Shabbat, through your oral law powers, through you thinking and toiling over those ideas, you'll maybe even get ideas which I didn't manage to bring out, actually, which were hopefully just latent there in what we spoke about today. So, happy Chanukah, everyone, and all the best.